Welcome to the LivXplore Podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sean Payne, founder and owner of LivXplore Real Estate and Lifestyle. Today I have with me Isaiah Chass, our founding agent. And I say this often, but today we really have a very special guest in Dave Alden. So, Dave, thank you very much for joining us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of what you do within the community? We jump right into it. So.
Well, I'm a retired civil engineer, mostly retired, still do a little bit. I do a lot of different things in the community. As we're going to talk about today, I was one of the co-founders of Urban Chat. I still function as its executive director. I have been on the transit committee for 11 of the last 12 years. I'm on the general plan advisory committee. I've been on Park and Rec. I do whatever the community, wherever I think I can benefit the community, I try to get involved.
Right. That's really awesome. And just like to kind of give the backstory of how we met. I was walking around the office complaining about just basically real estate developments, but also I think the allocation of parking to real estate at the time. And people kept hearing me talk about it. And then Elise Hempel said, "You really should talk to Dave Alden about this. This is right up his alley." And then a half hour later, she connected us with a group email, and from there we met and had a great conversation. And what I think is so great about you coming down here is, in one sense, we're kind of on the opposite ends of, we're a real estate brokerage here. We sell real estate. We definitely promote building that way. And I think that Urban Chat, there can be some connotations there that potentially those type of groups can be against development. And when I sat down with you, I was so impressed with not only your wealth of knowledge, but just how nuanced your opinions were, and everything you said. I was like, that may not be what I want to hear right now, or but that totally makes sense, and I can get behind that. And so that's why I appreciate you coming down here, and I hope we can continue these conversations, because I want people to know that this gentleman really cares about the community. He's a huge resource to the community. And if you don't know who he is, you should listen to the information he puts out there, because he's very informative. And so I think it can really benefit us that way. So,
it's interesting that you sort of bring up the YIMBY versus NIMBY, and I assume your audience is familiar with the two words.
Yes.
Our primary advocacy effort is called Know Before You Grow. It's a committee of Urban Chat.
Right.
And it's funny how people respond to the term Know Before You Grow. Mm-hmm. About a third of people assume that makes us a NIMBY organization. Right. About a third assume it's a YIMBY organization. And the other assume we're about how to grow marijuana. Truly, it does come up that way regularly. Right. Where I am personally, and I don't think I'm understating that the organization is also there, as I get tongue-tied. We are probably 75% YIMBY. We need housing. Mm-hmm. We have a homeless problem. Housing addresses that. We have a commute problem.
Yes.
We have 16,000 people a day who commute into Petaluma, 16,000 who commute out. That's unsustainable from a climate perspective. We need to address that. Mm-hmm. But it has to be the right kind of development. So we're not, any kind of development's great. No, it has to be something that works with a climate-friendly, sustainable future.
Right. Yeah. No. Again, so many words can have weird connotations out there. I just really encourage you to encourage you to see what Dave says, because it's very nuanced. But I think no matter politically where you stand, it makes sense on both sides. Well, it really does that way.
It's all about smart growth, and that's
exactly.
Not to specifically talk about a project, I'm not going to name the project, but I think what impressed me at one point, we were talking about a certain project, there should have been smarter, it should have been done differently, and there should have been higher density and more homes there. And I was like, whoa, this is a different conversation than I expected to happen that way. So yeah, I just, you're a huge resource, and I really encourage, I hope your reach expands. Hopefully we can get the message out here through this podcast a little bit more. Let's jump into Urban Chat and kind of how you were one of the co-founders. How did it organically come about that way? So,
after a number of years of my own personal learning about urbanism, I mean, quick backstory, in 1990, I went to Colonial Williamsburg and lived in one of the apartments where I was upstairs from one of the main streets. So my car was in a parking lot elsewhere for 4 days. I would go downstairs. I would really, immediately be part of the village. And it's sort of, this is really cool. I never had to touch a car and yet to go see any number of things I really want to see.
Right, right.
And my thought was, it's too bad it doesn't exist in our world today. Not long after I got back, I was living up in Bend, Oregon at the time. I was working on a large golf course residential development, and the architect came in with a plan where there was an urban core in the middle of it, with lodging and homes upstairs from businesses on a main street that was very car independent. And it's sort of like, wow, we really can do it today. That project never came to pass, but it tweaked my interest. I began doing more reading. By 2011, I was underemployed, and an architect friend suggested that we jointly write a blog about walkable urbanism. 7 years later, I had written 724 posts. He'd written 6. It wasn't a very equal partnership, but I enjoyed it. About 7 months into that, a local individual, Dan Like, who perhaps some of your listeners know, reached out to me going, I want to meet face-to-face to talk about this. 4 of us got together in June 2012 at Aqua's Cafe, and Urban Chat was born. It's it's grown slowly at first, then jumped up a bit. And we're always trying to find more audience, more things to do, more bandwidth to get things done. But we have a mailing list of 520 people, so we reach out to a lot of folks.
Right.
We just need to get more active.
Right. No, that's really impressive that way. I mean, I would definitely say that Urban Chat, people know who you are now, right? Because of that.
Yeah.
It's a group that carries some weight that way.
It's impressive the following that you're able to get to community meetings and hearings and that nature. It's a lot harder than people might think to get people to those events, and you do a great job of getting people down there.
It is hard. I'm not sure we do a great job yet. I mean, there are times we've had good turnouts, other times I'm a little disappointed. But yeah, people need to understand that showing up makes a difference. So, and we try to make it happen.
Right. And we'll mention this at the end of the podcast, but urbanchat.org is your website.
Correct.
That way, so if anyone wants to go there and check it out. And to talk about that, Urban Chat mission is to educate the public on 4 key elements of city planning: housing, transportation, city finances, and climate action.
Correct.
This is where it's going to be very hard not to deviate. Just try to keep this podcast on track because there's so many things that we could talk about. We may have to have you back in the future that way. Do you want to talk about, are there any topics right now within that's kind of pressing or that topical or at the top of your mind right now? That way, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. So.
Well, there's always half a dozen things at the top of my mind, and I'm juggling them. No, I mean, the thing that I'm probably most thinking about today is the 15-minute neighborhood concept, which really touches all of those. Right now, most of us assume for any chore we're going to do, we're going to hop in our car first. That's the default option. That's not a climate sustainable situation.
Right.
We need to create a world, a community. Let's start with a community. We can't solve the world. Where we can walk to more things, or ride bikes. Or hop on the bus. The bus is often an undervalued element of a 15-minute neighborhood, but it has to happen, and it's, in some ways, it's maybe the most important transportation element.
Right.
And that touches on a number of those mission pillars. We need more housing. Somebody recently put on Twitter, and I love it, if a 15-minute neighborhood is a place where I can walk in 5 minutes to get a cappuccino, but my barista has to drive 30 minutes to make it, it's not a 15-minute world.
Right.
Which is absolutely dead on, and it's a problem we have to solve.
Right.
So there was an independent group, let's say the Sustainable Development Assessment Team, local team, that was created in what is now the backspace of your office.
Right.
That did a project through the AIA last year on 15-minute neighborhoods. We have a report. They are now becoming a committee of Urban Chat because our missions align, and I was always involved in that group anyway, so it's a very logical merge.
Right.
They made a presentation last evening to the General Plan Advisory Committee, which I sit on, so I was wearing 2 hats last night. And anybody who wants to look up that video on the city website, it was a really good conversation about what 15-minute neighborhoods are and what the challenges will be to get to that vision.
Sure. Do you want to touch just a little bit for our listeners that are unfamiliar with the 15-minute concept that way?
Sure. There's a lot of different ways it comes out, as you and I were
Right.
talking about earlier. Basically, it's how do we create a world where you can do more of your things without touching your car? Mm-hmm. Whether that's walking 2 blocks to a grocery store, whether it's hopping on a bike to get downtown and having adequate bike parking so you can enjoy the downtown experience, whether it's having a bus come through your neighborhood on a regular enough basis that you're comfortable hopping on it and going to Rohnert Park if that's where your church is.
Sure.
But whatever it takes to make things happen, mostly within 15 minutes of where your home is without you needing car keys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Simplest way to say it.
Right. And so, like, I know that when I'm in a meeting or something, someone will hint that they don't like this concept or that we need cars or things like that. I mean, again, this isn't like a concept where like you're forcing everyone out of their cars. I think that's really important for people to understand. There's like, there are people out there that need to use their cars to drive into town and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So we're not like giving you a slap on the wrist and saying, what, you brought your car to town or something of that nature. It's just that it's a multifaceted approach to addressing these issues that way. And I think that like what we'll see is that people will find that hopefully there's going to be a rough transition, but people will find that like it's probably a better experience to maybe take a bike down or things of that nature. And it's just like it's hard to break old habits. And why I say this is, as I mentioned to you, that my mom's from Norway, so I spent a lot of my childhood going back to Norway and we rode bikes everywhere. I mean, much more so than here. That was just like Oslo, Norway's higher density, metropolitan area that way. And so we would ride bikes all over the place or things like that, or public transportation. And it's like, I don't want to like, as soon as I say this, people are like, oh no, but it's a really good way of getting around. Like it's a very efficient way. And it's just, we're not used to it that way. And part of it's like living in Sonoma County, it's not dense. You have people that live out in the country or things like that. So you have to use cars, but no one's going to say like everyone has to hop on a bicycle. It's just that once you do, you may find that there are better ways to explore your community that way. So.
And I think a lot of the reason that people complain about that whole idea of using alternative forms of transportation is that right now it's not convenient for them to do that. The only reason you wouldn't walk to the store or ride your bicycle to the store is because it's not convenient. They're not close enough, or there's not adequate bike parking, whatever. I would think that once those are more readily accessible, people would want to do that. It's not being forced on them. It makes more sense. Like most of Europe, it doesn't make sense to get in your car to go get food. You ride down the street, and it's a narrow, side street, and you ride your bike there, and you're back within 5 minutes. And it's much easier to do that than drive.
I have a niece who lives in Berlin, and she says exactly what you just said, and it's always fun to talk to her about that. I know we have what I just often refer to as the transition problem.
Right.
Right now we are so car dependent that no one can believe we could do without that. We have projects that come into the city council, and the city council often wants to add parking because there's not enough parking to it. We heard that recently on the Mid-Penn housing project on Washington Street.
Right.
But no, if we don't start creating housing with less parking, if we don't build more bike lanes, if we don't slow traffic so that it feels safer to be on your bike, we don't get to the future we need to get to. And yet, making a change from where we are now to where we're going to be, where we need to be in the future, is going to feel awkward at times. Okay, I'm willing to be awkward. I'm willing to be inconvenienced for a while to get to a better future.
Yep. No, and you know what? It's about habits. 2 days ago, I got my hair cut. My barber is just so close to here. I hopped in my car. I drove over there, and then I realized, what am I doing? And it's that condition that I have to break. It's quicker to walk over there than get in my car, find parking. And it's just habitually I just got in my car for a second, and I was like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? But that's just part of the habit. And we do encourage, I want to say that like here at LivXplore, we do encourage alternative forms of transportation. We're about hopefully later this year, we have a series of e-bikes out there. We'll increase the fleet and we'll start showing homes on e-bikes. And our agents from time to time will hop on an e-bike if they have to go do something really quick. It's faster on an e-bike than it is a car that way. But there's going to be, it's a mindset, and I obviously still struggle with it. I mean, we are going to, but it's going to, it'll be uncomfortable. But I think, again, it's just it's a better way of doing things not for everyone, but for some people that way. So.
Well, plus, when you bump into people, whether it's on a bike, walking, there's a quote that I love from Jane Jacobs, and I'm not going to get it quite right. It was part of the GPAC presentation last night. But casual sidewalk interactions, as minor as they may seem, are the small change from which the wealth of cities is built. It's true. When I walk around my block, I will end up in conversations with 2 or 3 different neighbors, learning things I didn't know before, looking for things we can do together that wouldn't have happened had I driven.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really important. Not to, I mean, that just strengthens the sense of community. Yeah. Kind of like, I'm not going to get sidetracked. But to talk about like the blue zones. Are you familiar with the?
I am familiar with
the blue zones.
Yeah.
If you look, there's each blue, there's commonalities within the blue zones, but they have different diets and things of that nature. But one thing that the first thing that they all share is an extremely strong sense of community, and that's really the one thing that kind of binds them all together. And then their lifestyles are a little bit different that way. So just going on what you said right there,
I'm intrigued by how blue zones will fit in with the community.
Sure.
I mean, there are so many things we're already doing that align with blue zones.
Right.
If they focus on the health side of things, that doesn't touch me at all. But there are people who work at the blue zones who I know well. I knew them from earlier interactions. They've now joined the blue zones, so we are very much aligned with at least half the blue zone's mission. And I don't know how that's going to sort out once they've come to town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In theory versus reality, how it plays out that way. Yeah,
exactly.
But no, I mean, another very interesting organization. With a lot of really good ideas. But what you say just sounds very familiar that way. Just how important the sense of community is. And again, I go back, especially coming out of. Hopefully, people would realize this. Like coming out of COVID, maybe it's a reminder of how important it is to interact with people and things of that way. So there's a little bit more motivation, but we really need that.
Well, and oddly enough, during COVID, we in some ways created more interactions. For many of us, not as much. But with the soft streets or the slow streets approach, safe streets or slow streets, where we shut certain streets down and people could walk, they probably saw neighbors they had never met before. Yes, they met through masks and away from a distance. And I'm disappointed that all that went away as quickly as it did. I think there was an opportunity there to build on that, and instead we let the end of COVID.
That's a really good point. That was never part of the messaging. That should have been part of the road diet, I guess, messaging that way. The whole controversy was just about going down to one lane and make it more bike friendly, but it didn't really go into the philosophy behind that. That message didn't get out there that way. And a kind of a side note, all that noise about the road diet.
I know.
Where'd it go?
No, I'm thrilled that happened. That was actually, I don't want to say the only success. It wasn't the only success, but it was probably the most visible success Urban Chat had. When that was when grant monies were first available in about 2013, the council chose not to go after those grant funds. It was on a 3-3 vote with one recusal. It was close, but they didn't get there. Really? In 2016, when the next opportunity came up, to mention a couple of names, John Crowley of Aquas Cafe and Bill Cover of Foundry Wharf reached out to me going, how do we get in front of this and make sure it happens? And that was the biggest single lobbying effort Urban Chat ever put together. We went door to door in the neighborhoods, convincing neighborhoods it was a good idea. We had a petition signed by business owners who were afraid of losing parking and convinced them it was the right thing to do. Even when we went into the council meeting where they were going to vote, we thought we had the votes. We weren't quite sure. But it was such a strong presentation. Then Mayor Glass later told me it was the best single presentation ever seen to the city council that eventually passed 7-0. One thing we did that day, and it's come back, the lesson I'm trying to reapply now in some other situations. A lot of folks wanted us to include bike lanes in the initial lobbying effort. And it was sort of, no, that's a bridge too far. That's going to make it seem too extreme. Let's get the road diet grant application going, and then let's go back and lobby for bike lanes.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we got those too.
Right.
It was just a matter of, sometimes you can't ask for the whole pie. You need to ask for half the pie, and then once you have half the pie, go for the rest of it. And we played that game perfectly in that situation.
Right.
So, but yeah, we take a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, no, that's I never even I'm going to add that to Facebook arguments now. I mean, like, there's so many, like, side traffic and having to go ride my bike on side streets and stuff like that, and that totally makes sense that way.
Well, there's all the concern of people detouring up to 5th or 6th Street from the road diet.
Right.
I've heard not heard of anybody doing that.
Right.
The road diet works just fine.
Yeah. I mean, so I sat on the Downtown Association, the board for the Downtown Association when it went in, and we heard so much noise from it. And so I just pulled out a stopwatch. And so from Petaluma Boulevard at East Washington, every time I just hit my cell phone stopwatch and I drive there prior to, I can't remember the exact times now. Before the road diet went in, I did it maybe like 4 or 5 times. Then I did it, I want to say the first couple weeks the road diet was in. And there was less than a minute change. I was going from Washington down to D Street, and so if there was a change, not that sometimes traffic just continued right through, often did, but if there was a delay, it was like a 50-second delay more than what before. And I was like, I have so many other things in my life right now that are pressing than arguing over this 50 seconds. That occasionally happens.
And I'm guessing even the 50 seconds was reduced not long afterwards. Because every time you change the traffic, it takes a while to get the signals re-optimized.
Right.
And I know they struggled for the first few months with signalization, and they got that a lot better over time.
They did, yeah. So, yeah, right now it's very smooth. But even at that time, it was like a little clumsy going through, but it wasn't enough. Like, I mean, it would take me longer to formulate the thought in 50 seconds than actually, so.
People just don't like the idea of change.
Yeah.
Whatever form of change
that
is.
Right. Yeah, and the assumption is always that change is going to be for the worse, and many times, if it's well thought out, it's for the better. It just takes some time to get there.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. Is there, let's talk about the film festival that you have coming up. Tell us a little bit about that. So,
there is a group they now call themselves the Better Cities Film Festival out of Detroit. They have 800 films in their library.
Okay.
They will work with local communities who want to host a film festival, come up and curate 2 hours of short movies on different aspects of urbanism that they'll make available.
Okay.
We have begun working with them. We have we are in negotiation with 2 different venues. We may even have 2 nights of the film festival if we think there's sufficient interest.
Okay.
I don't want to get too far into where we are because so much of it is still being planned.
Right.
Probably sometime in September, we'll have 1 or 2 nights of short films on bicycling, parking, walkability, downtown living, any number of topics. So,
Right. That's really cool and needed. When you say venues, what type of level of? I would assume this has been going out through Urban Chat. I mean, what type of level of interest have you had so far regarding that?
I think people know it's coming. I don't think we have. We've had a number of people offer to help sponsor, which is great, and we will definitely be following up on those.
Okay.
In terms of attendance, my thought is if we can get 40 people to a Know Before You Grow forum online, we should have no problem getting 100 people to a film festival with wine beforehand and whatever. We're looking at venues that would be from 100 to 200 seats.
Okay.
We've reached out to other communities, Windsor, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, that don't have anything right now like Urban Chat, but there are people there who align with Urban Chat, and I'm trying to talk them into putting together 30 people to come down on a small bus and join us for the evening. So I'm comfortable we can end up with 200 people attending this thing if we work at it hard.
What about the Roanoke Park Cotati area in terms of urban? It would seem like that's really needed up there because you have Roanoke Park, which is like the weirdest. I like
let's not make fun of Roder Park.
Well, so I live in Cotati.
Okay.
I certainly I'm integrated in those communities that way. But yeah, like when you talk about city planning, everyone rolls their eyes when you talk about Roanoke Park. Now you do have Sumo Village going in there, which I think could be really beneficial to the area. And I think that Roanoke Park prior to COVID, they were doing some more farmers markets and Friday events to try to create more sense of a community there. So they were doing things, but you still have a lot of homes going in up there, and I hope there's some type of I haven't heard of anything like Urban Chat in terms of community discussion that way or anything like that. So that's a kind of a central point that they're building a lot of new homes over there, and I just don't want
homes that they just try to get. Typically, their community they try to get as many in as possible.
They do, and they're still kind of a little bit on the outskirts that way. Right. So I just hope that there's a balanced voice that says what are we doing here? So
there's nobody I know in those two communities. Well, let me back up one step. There is a planning commissioner in Katati who is active with Urban Chat, comes down here regularly, participates online.
Right.
So he is probably the nearest thing those two communities have to somebody with that voice.
Okay.
But it takes a village to make a difference.
Right.
One person, no matter how right his thoughts are, can't move the boat.
Sure. No, that's good to know. That's good to know that way. So, but getting back to the film festival, so sometime in September.
Probably September.
Okay.
Probably a weeknight.
Do you have like an idea of? Do you have like a list of films that maybe a couple that you can tell us about right now? Or you just?
I really don't.
Okay.
If anyone wants to go to the Better Cities Film Festival website, they have a trailer for what they want to do. I am going to meet with those folks. I'm heading back to a pair of land use conferences a week from Monday. Strong Towns, followed by Congress for the New Urbanism. The Better Cities Film Festival folks will be there. I'll meet them for a beer. We'll talk about it. We're probably going to involve our sponsors also. If somebody wants to be a sponsor, we'll give them some latitude to decide what films they want. So,
right, I see.
At this point, I have really no idea what will be on the list.
Okay.
But we'll try to tailor it to what makes sense for Petaluma.
That's another cool project. Is there anything? I know it's just in the beginning stages, but how can the community help in these planning stages? Just support or anything that way? That
probably just reach out and become part of the committee trying to make it happen. Okay. We always need more bodies.
Right. Yeah. And in order to reach out through Urban Chat, go to the website. That's the best way.
Yeah.
That way.
There are email addresses for a number of us on the website. You can start with me or grab somebody else there.
Right.
Whatever works.
No, that sounds like a really cool project. We'll have to talk more about that. And is there anything else that we haven't touched on that?
One thing I should mention, it just came to mind as we were talking about the website. Under who we are, we list, I think, the 3 people who were original founders and are still active, and then other people who have been active, who have become active since then and have made a difference. One of them is our current mayor. So it sort of tells you that we have made a difference. In fact, Kevin ran touting his involvement with Know Before You Grow. So I don't think there's any other community in California where somebody who came from an urbanist organization managed to get his way onto to become a mayor of town.
Right.
So,
right. No. Again, Know Before You Grow and Urban Chat is topical. Like people know who they are that way. Yeah. And I hope more people reach out to you and that grows, because again, I just think that it's just good information. It's just it's a good conversation to have and to really to figure out where we need to go. I mean, again, at some point we're going to have you back in here really soon, talk about the 15-minute village more, but it solves so many problems, and I think if people really understood it a little bit more, they'd be like, oh, that makes sense, that way. Okay. So.
And if you want a full presentation from the local SDAT team, I can get that arranged.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Love that.
Yeah,
okay.
That would be awesome.
I can reach out to the woman who's the head chair of that committee and get that scheduled.
That would be really cool. Let's figure out how to do that, but I'd love to have that. Okay. So
we briefly talked about before the podcast about the different, there's 15-minute village, but maybe even a 5-minute village within that. That'll be great. We could go on a whole nother podcast episode about that.
Oh, we can. I mean, there's so many different aspects to making 15-minute villages or local villages work that,
Yeah, no, before we were talking, laughing, that when I first heard of this concept, it was the 20-minute village. Now it's the 15-minute village. We had Brad Baker from SOMO on the podcast last week, and he was hyping the 5-minute village. So, I think there's a niche out there for the 3.5-minute village. Anyway, but Dave, thank you very much again for joining us. And again, I encourage everyone to reach out and check out urbanchat.org. Really cool website, and there's just a lot of information there that can sprawl out to more information that way. Anything else that
for those of you that might just say a comment on social media, get involved, come down to one of your meetings, and don't just write a comment, actually get involved with making a change.
Please.
Like your
We have a
organization
forum next week, probably on converting offices to residential. It'll be online next Wednesday evening.
Do you want to go into that a little bit more?
Oh.
So well, here's
Oh,
this is
I
perfect.
thought we were closing. Okay.
No, this is a great topic. So we
Okay.
talk about this all the time. We were going to close.
Okay.
But let's talk about it. So why this is so important right now is the commercial sector is kind of going through what the residential side went through back in 2008, where I mean, it's just tough times right now. I mean, we're seeing, properties that pre-COVID in San Francisco that were valued at, like, let's say $300 million are selling at, 50 or 60 million now. So we're seeing, and we're having liquidity issues, just like last time in the commercial mortgage market. Everyone calm down, not in the residential market, but in the commercial side, they are having liquidity issues now for lending. And so how that plays out, I never want people to go through bad times, but potentially this could be an opportunity to address our housing crisis. So go.
I was trying to interrupt you there before you get too far into it.
Yeah.
It probably isn't as good an opportunity as
Is not, okay.
you'd like to think.
Okay.
I mean, a couple of things happen. Markets go through transitions.
Right.
There's a lot of people now saying, hey, the work at home thing isn't working out. Everybody get back to the office.
Right.
We may see office go back up.
Sure.
We will begin the Know Before You Grow Forum on Wednesday with a video from, you familiar with SPUR? San Francisco Planning and Urban Research.
Okay.
It's about a century-old San Francisco group that is very much like Urban Chat, but way, way bigger.
Uh-huh.
They did a program about a year ago about converting an office near the Civic Center down, the office building, near the Civic Center into residential. It's a really fun video. Maybe I'm a geek, but I found it fun. But the bottom line is the cost of housing wasn't that much less than it would have been if you built a building from scratch.
I see.
Reusing an old building just isn't all that easy, especially
Right.
when you're converting uses.
Right.
And then when you have a small footprint building, it's easier because you have a lot of windows for the area. When here in Petaluma, we tend to have large footprint buildings
Right.
that are shorter, and there's just no way to create units in the middle. You need windows.
Sure.
I've seen some ideas of punching in light wells, so you create center courtyards that can have windows on them. But now you've made it that much more expensive. So I think we want to have the forum in large part to say it's not a panacea. Maybe there's a place or two where it works.
Right.
But ultimately, we need to build downtown multi-story housing if we're truly going to make headway on the housing shortage.
And that's
Sorry about that.
Exactly the reason why you're on the podcast and why you're so valuable is, like, in theory, and when I read it, I'm like, this makes sense, let's do it. And then we have these conversations, you're like, hey, hold on a second here. So like this might be a better way. So that's exactly why you're such a great resource. Yeah. And so when is this discussion happening?
It'll be Wednesday evening.
Wednesday evening?
On Zoom.
Okay.
7 o'clock.
Okay.
The link will be on the Urban Chat website.
Urban Chat. Okay. Regardless, if it's a feasible solution or not, it seems like a really cool topic to listen into, and I think I'll do it. I don't want to speak for you that way. So, but yeah, that's the perfect example of why you're here, and
I'm here to pop balloons.
Such a great, yeah. No, you're here to give really good information that way, right? Like so. Yeah, that's I think a good way to kind of wrap this up. So, Dave, thank you very much again for coming down here.
Glad to do it.
Hopefully, we can convince you to come down here again in the future.
I will happily do it whenever you ask.
Again, everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe so you can get more of Dave's great information in the future. I'm Sean Payne, owner and founder of LivXplore. Dave Alden, thank you so much for joining us today, of Urban Chat, and Isaiah, our founding agent. Thank you, guys. Have a good one. Welcome to the LivXplore Podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.